Thank you, everyone, for joining today's Wednesday webinar. So today we're talking about how internal talent mobility creates long-term leadership excellence. And presenting today is Peter Sullivan. Peter is a registered representative of LPL Financial, provides executive benefit plan services through TruStage, specializing in SERPs for credit unions. With over 30 years in financial services, he helps businesses design and implement retirement and executive benefit programs. He holds multiple FINRA registrations and is a member of the Massachusetts Bar. Peter, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. And thank you, everybody, for joining today. It's a nice cold day in New England, but so no winter's coming, and wish everyone early Thanksgiving. I work for TruStage. As you mentioned, I'm also an LPL rep, and I've been here for about 11 years, working strictly with credit unions. I cover New England, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, so pretty much the Northeast, if you will. And again, exclusively working with credit unions of all sizes. So we see a lot of things that you're struggling with or trying to accomplish. And in terms of what we're seeing today, it's succession planning is by far the number one item. It's interesting. When I joined back 11 years ago, I was told that there's going to be a huge migration of CEOs retiring, and it kind of waited a little bit, but in the last 3 or 4 years, it's been tremendous the amount of turnover that I've seen, and different credit unions have taken different approaches to build that leadership continuity. And so, with that, we're going to discuss a little bit about what we're seeing and what some of the tools are that you may think about as you endeavor to try and build a nice succession plan. So, the first part is succession planning, and then obviously protecting your talent, because the greatest competition I like to say isn't necessarily isn't the credit union or the bank down the street. It really is a matter of you build this talent, you build these people with all this intellectual capital, and then potentially they move on and take that knowledge with them and compete. So that is the second part of this, which is first part is building it. Second part is what do you do to protect those people? And I think as most of you know, succession planning has been around for quite a while. The NCUA finally did adopt a rule. It's been delayed, but it will be going into effect January 1st of 26. Most of you probably have this. I have been just in conversations with credit unions over the last 4 or 5 years. I've been asking, has the NCUA or the state by extension, have they been asking about succession plans? And the short answer is yes. They finally put it into action. It's not an overly difficult process to comply with. It's pretty straightforward. What they're really looking for here isn't the larger credit unions that possibly have a fully implemented or templated or plan that is ready to go. They're really focusing on the small credit unions that don't have a plan. And the reason for that is the goal is to try to protect those credit unions and protect the industry so that we don't lose credit unions. And just as an interesting aside, in the last couple of years, the average rate has been one credit union per day has merged with another credit union. So we're losing credit unions essentially by about 300 plus a year. And again, the goal is to try to stem that tide. And part of that is having a succession plan that hopefully can be impactful to the success of both the large and small credit unions. And so we typically see there's three types of, and I'll put a fourth one in here, emergency succession plans. The first is kind of hit by the bus. I'll prefer to say it's the person wins the lottery, and that's a more nice way of doing it. But it's something that's kind of sudden, extreme. There may be a dotted line to someone's going to be the next CEO, if you will, but it's somewhat in a rush fashion where the credit has to react pretty quickly. And then second strategy, or second type we like to see, it's a little more comprehensive. It may not have all the pieces in place, but it's got something that is a little more measured, a little more scheduled out. It's comprehensive, documented. And candidly, I probably see this more often. The first category I do see once in a while, and have seen that more recently in the last 4 or 5 months. But the second is the most common one. There's some sort of plan in place. For the CEO, and then that person comes in, and then they tend to build their team out. So it's a little more time to think about that and have a strategy in place. The third is what I call really the best strategy, which is the plan's well documented, continuing to evolve, continuing to improve. They're looking at that consistently. And when I think of the credits that I work with that have had continued success and somewhat seamless transition, those are the ones that really took the time to spend the time to document it, continue to improve it, and continue to look at options when it comes to who are the next leaders within that crediting organization. So when you look at the search for talent, the question is, how do you get there? And it's never been easy to attract talent, and it's more important to keep talent. And oftentimes is the question of, is it an in-house person that takes over, or is it someone from outside? And a lot of that depends upon what kind of talent pool you have. And so some of the creditings that have been successful with this, I think they've built a good leadership continuity program using internal mobility. And there's a couple of things that really revolve around that. There's cross training, which means that you break down silos. You have leaders, if you will, kind of shadow other leaders working within different parts of the organization. There's coaching, mentoring. I think in any level, that is probably the most important thing. It's also establishing some accountability, which means that isn't just someone going out and just shadowing someone, but there's actually a program where you're determining how beneficial that is to the employee, and then obviously complementary leadership, and but eventually it comes down to changing the leadership culture to break down fiefdoms and to be more inclusive. So as I was mentioning that it's never easy to, as I think as most of you know, to attract and to groom and to develop great leaders. And it's getting harder and harder when you think of just the demographics, the baby boomers and the amount of population they represent in their retirement ages, if you will. So a lot of creditors have looked at this and said, what do we do? What can we do in-house? And what can we do with the talent we have? And also bringing talent in that's going to be able to if you will, hopefully build into our next leaders. So a lot of creditors looked at internal mobility, and it's a matter of, what do you do? What are the best practices? And so cross training, having some accountability, thinking about employees working for, if you will, different groups of the crediting helps to break down silos. And when you think about the leadership, it breaks down the idea of fiefdoms. It breaks down the idea of it's more of a collaborative. And what you end up finding is that you find two things. One is people they may have the ability and the skill set to move up to be the next leader, and you also find out maybe they're not. And so it has multiple benefits by implementing something like this. And ultimately, it has to be accountable. There has to be accountable, and you should reward the people that are doing the mentoring because it's important that everyone have a stake in this. So when you look at whether it's in-house or looking for someone outside, we're not advocating that you should only build leaders in-house, but we're saying that, that's your greatest talent pool initially. And if you can try to develop that and then go outside if you need to, there's a fair amount of success stories in that area as well. It's a good approach. So this is an interesting slide because we often use this in terms of slotting people, if you will, where is the next leader and where is the next leader coming from. But I'd change this around a little bit. Instead of names, I would say, what kind of skill set do we need in these positions? In other words, for the CFO, what should they have? And then try to, if you will, find the people that meet those criteria, not just the people themselves in terms of the where they're slotted today. And then also, this is something that's a working uh, progress, if you will. It's not static. It isn't something you do once. It's something that the idea is you find out whether or not that person is capable of maybe being the next leader. And there's certainly a number of people that I've worked with over the years who are very comfortable being in a certain role, don't want additional responsibility. And there are others that I clearly do. So it's an exercise that I think helps structure the organization in terms of what talent you have, and also where the holes are, what needs to be addressed, and where you need to put your time, if you will. So when you think about this, there's a lot of decisions to be made. It's time, it's goals, people, obviously, budget, what's it going to cost, legal, other contracts, other employment agreements, and you look at your strategic partners in terms of who can help out with this. There are certainly your accountants play a role in this, lawyers, probably corporate in-house counsel, outside counsels, very important there. Insurance providers for solutions. And right now, there's a number of succession consultants that we work with that are doing a nice job in the industry, really helping with creditors to understand this, to get to get to the goal of building that structure so that when they do have to make a switch again, it's somewhat continuous and it's not an abrupt fire drill, if you will. And then interesting, this is more of it's a little bit dated, but it gives a good sense of where they're coming from. So when you look at new CEOs, for instance, 2023, 41%, 41 of 82% came without CEO experience. And that's fairly common in my experience. There is some that had prior CEO experience, but it's a minority. And you can follow the numbers down there. But it's interesting, there's about a 60-40 split when it comes to in-house homegrown, if you will, versus coming from an outside organization. I would say, just anecdotally, I think that the larger the organization, I tend to see it being more 50-50, maybe even a little more towards the outside candidate, if you will. But again, it shows that credit unions are having success at building that team, but it's simply a matter of getting the right talent in the right talent place. And there's credit unions that do need input from outside. They need someone to come in and change a culture. And there are others that have built a culture that is very successful and want to maintain that with in-house talent. So as I mentioned before in the very first slide, that your probably your greatest competition is the person sitting in that chair, if you will, because you've given them the intellectual capital, you've invested the time and the money in their skill set, and then if they were to walk away, if you will, theoretically they take all that with you. So protecting your talent is something that is important. It's also something the NCUA and the state address. They understand that you need to create programs that are designed to retain, recruit, and hopefully help this person retire. So when you look at this, you should look at what you have today, and we get this all the time. You should look at where the holes are, what it is that maybe we could do that be more meaningful to the employees. And when it comes to executive benefits, which is my specialty, obviously, it really comes down to it has to be meaningful to the employee, whatever it is that you do, and it has to be cost effective to the credit union. So it can't just be a one-sided event, meaning that you provide something, but doesn't have the value to the employee. At least then you're providing something that hopefully gives that employee pause when the recruiter calls or another organization calls. But that's again, as from the NCUA perspective, these programs are well versed, they're well understood, and they encourage them, and they expect that you would put in plans like that to keep that talent. So every plan essentially that we do has an element of this. And what's nice about when it comes to designing plans, you can structure the plans to be customized to each employee. So what may be attractive to someone else is not attractive to someone else. For instance, the attractiveness, I'm working with one where they're doing kind of a unique employment contract that's a little different than the usual, but it's customized to that person and will be really meaningful for them. At the end of the day, you're trying to retain the employee, you hope. And that's important. Again, getting back to the point that the benefit has to be meaningful. And sometimes having a retirement program in place, something that allows that employee to retire, is a good thing because you don't want the employee to maybe hang on a little too long than they want to or need to, if you will, to allow other people to move up the ranks. So having the exit strategy is as important as well. And so when you look at the overall program, you look at what you will have for today versus what could be offered or what may be more meaningful to your employees. Really two things: retirement, retention, or both. It almost always comes into that play. And it depends upon where the employee is in their employment life, if you will. If they've got a long runway to go, retirement looks a long way off. If they've got a short runway, maybe 10 years or so, retirement looks a lot closer. So how you design the plan is, that I get, again, as I mentioned, is very nice. You can customize it and you can make it personalized to that employee so it is truly beneficial. And here's a good example of why we do these plans. When you think of the average benefit or I should say the employee benefits that you offer right now, I think of it as a pyramid, if you will. The pyramid's shaped like this. The first baseline is all the ERISA benefits that are provided by the credit union. And what you find is the higher you go up the wage scale, if you will, those employees tend to get discriminated against. For instance, on the retirement shortfall, the employee who's making $400,000 a year on a percentage basis simply can't save enough for retirement or as much as the person making $200,000 or $100,000. So you find that there are gaps there. And not just the retirement shortfall, but also group life insurance, maybe long-term disability. So these are things that executive benefits allows you to address, and allows you to address it on a discriminatory basis, in the sense that you're able to target certain employees. And the nice thing is there, again, it oftentimes is the most meaningful dollar you spend because it is targeted at a particular problem. But these are the challenges that your highly paid employees are facing every day when it comes to retirement, especially. That's most glaring, but also potentially shortfall with insurance and risk protection, which is disability. So again, this is a nice graph that just lays out where the broad-based plans, which are mostly ERISA-based, what they're covering. And again, for most of the rank and file, that does the job. But when it gets to the upper executives, if you will, oftentimes deferral plans and some sort of retention long term, that has much more meaning. And it also, I should mention, it's a way for you to compete with other financial organizations. Being a nonprofit industry, there are certain things that you can do. For-profit industries can offer stock options, is it different types of benefits. So again, getting back to the idea of the NCUA and the states by extension, they understand that. So they understand that you have to provide this in some way to compete with the other financial organizations, just from a talent perspective. But these are the goals, or these are the programs that we see typically that are implemented, and each one is a little bit different depending upon what the underlying executive is looking for and is meaningful to that person. It just gives you a sense of what we see. In the $102 million category, you can get a sense of the average percent of employees that have this. 3 billion, clearly that rises. I would argue, though, that the smaller credit unions, you're seeing more and more executive benefits almost as an entree, if you will. And especially when a new CEO comes in from outside the organization, almost always there's a contract that says there will be some sort of executive benefit plan in place within the first 12 to 18 months. So I'm seeing it contractually obligated. And so best practices is to look at that. And as you can see, the larger the credit union, the more prevalent the executive benefits are. But you're seeing the smaller credit unions catch up to that. And again, understanding that it's options that you have to compete. Just to give you a sense, there really I know you hear about these things all the time. They're simple. The programs are fairly simple, but you can do a lot within the different programs. So, for instance, the B plan, which we see, that's usually initial entree into executive benefits. It's really about asset accumulation, not really retention. It's simply an overlay to the 401k plan. It helps solve the retirement income gap that we addressed earlier. And then the F plan was really more asset accumulation, which again is mostly based on retention. It can be structured for retirement, but generally it's more retention based. Plans that offer a benefit in 3 to 5 years, something like that, really to get the employee up to past certain milestones. And then life insurance based, which is more of a long term, tends to be more retirement focused. It can have some retention aspects to it as well along the way, but it tends to be a long term solution. And so within the credit union space, those are the only three plans that we typically see from an executive benefit standpoint in terms of building wealth or building retirement, if you will. Then you have the risk management, which again is disability, life insurance. We see that a little bit less, but they're out there. There's a need out there, and the nice thing is you can address those. So the question always comes up, well, how do we do this? What's the most successful way to do this? Because oftentimes this isn't a core board competency. It's something where they bring a consultant, they might bring me or one of my competitors, and we try to walk them through what the program needs to look like, really from a peer standpoint, what are other credit unions doing, and also from an industry standpoint, what's competitive in this marketplace. So the first question is, why are we doing this? And it sounds simple, but that is actually you have to understand why it is we're doing. Are we doing this because we want to retain this employee? We want to build a team around this employee. It's a good idea to have one employee who's actually in charge, if you will. Oftentimes, that is a compensation committee. It flows to the compensation committee, then generally flows back up to the board. Some boards don't have a compensation committee, which is fine, but usually there's some sort of subset that is addressing this. Third thing is have target dates. I've seen plans that have extended over 2 or 3 years, if you can imagine, before it's implemented, and others that went very quickly. So having some sort of a date that you like this to be completed is clearly important. And then obviously choose a plan provider, someone that you're comfortable working with, that you feel they have the knowledge and the skill set to get the plan done, if you will. And then fifth, look at the executive. Look at where they are in their lifespan, if you will. In other words, as I mentioned, someone's got a long runway to go. The way they look at retirement is far different than someone who's got 10 years to go. So how you design the plan, again, the nice thing is you can structure that, you can design it so that it meets that particular executive's needs. And then you look at the solutions that we have. We just mentioned the B plan, very good in terms of asset accumulation. The F plan is very good for retention, can be for retirement, but generally is more geared towards retention. And then if you're looking for a long-term overreaching retirement benefit that can have elements of retention, the split doll plan also plays a nice role. And with number seven, which is the what ifs, there is a legal plan document that is put in place. I like to say this covers the what ifs because you don't want to have that situation happen and go, geez, well, what happens now? What do we do? Having a well-drafted document addresses that. Usually they're customized for each person. It's not a master plan document that just has adopting employees, if you will. But really, you put the time and effort in to have the plan itself be customized for both the credit union and the employee. And the examiners are well versed in these plans. We, as you can imagine, we handle about 25% of all credit unions, about 4,800 executives. So oftentimes when I talk to the credit unions that I work with, an examiner's been in there, I say, what kind of questions do they ask? And very rarely do they get pushback on executive benefit plans. I'm trying to think of the last time they did. It really doesn't come up that often because they understand that this is something that is a tool that you have, and they expect you to use that to build these plans out for your senior executive staff to, as we said earlier, to help promulgate the leadership continuity. And then obviously you want to have some sort of oversight. These are plans that you don't want to just set. You don't want to forget them. You can set the stage, put the plan in place, but you should have routine reviews and no less than annually. And typically, depending upon the underlying investment, it may be more often than that. But common oversight is very important. And that's actually one of the things the examiners do look for. They want to make sure that the board and the senior leadership understand these plans, that there's no mistake about what they're looking to accomplish. Bottom line is they say, when is the, best time to invest? That was 20 years ago. Well, next best time is today. These plans can take, as I mentioned, I've had people who have taken 2 or 3 years. When you when you're trying to hit a goal at the end of the day, and the longer you wait just compresses the time, which means typically the amount of capital that you have to put forth, if you will. And I should also mention the one nice thing about these programs, oftentimes these plans are structured. If they're structured properly, there is not really a cost to the credit. It's simply movement of capital from one, if you will, from one account to another. Because when you think about it, your inventory is cash, and that's a unique advantage that the credit union space has. There are other organizations simply don't. So the sooner you move forward with a program like this, the better off you're going to be. Not that you should move indiscriminately forward in a measured fashion, but the point is getting the process started to make sure that when you look at the leadership continuity and look at potential succession plans, it isn't the first one. Someone just leaves or wins the lottery. You've got some sort of strategy in place, and you've got plans in place to try to address what the next move is, if you will. So I would maybe, while they're thinking about that, I would just say in general, as I mentioned, this is by far the number one issue that credit unions are facing on all shapes and sizes, and especially in the smaller credit unions, it's probably more important than not because oftentimes if there is not a succession plan in place or something in their apparent, what often happens is, again, merger tends to be that fourth option. And that is exactly what the NCUA and the states by extension are trying to prevent and for the health of our credit union industry. So with that said, know that there's a lot you can do. But the first step is kind of finding someone that has a little more knowledge and works with these programs. And oftentimes that is networking with other CEOs and potentially other board members from other credit unions and see what they did. It's a good idea to get a first step on that, if you will.
Thank you very much, Peter, for sharing some great information. I hope it gave everyone something to think about as we enter into 2026. And maybe you're doing your strategic planning or you're wrapping up strategic planning. Very important topic. If anyone has any questions that they have and they would like to connect directly with Peter, please feel free to reach out to anyone at the association and we can make that introduction for you. Thank you very much, and everyone enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
You, Dean. Thank you, everybody,
Take
for
care,
joining
everyone.
today. Have a nice day.